What's happening, everybody? It's Sean with Reactions to the Classics, and today we got a Doobie Brothers Top 10 brought to us by our friend, longtime supporter and patron of the channel, D. Thank you, D. We don't have any Doobie Brothers stuff up, so it is about time. And before we jump into them, let's get some background on the band that was provided by D. He gave me a nice little write-up. D says, there is no American band I'm aware of that has had more personnel changes than the Doobie Brothers. I will try to get all these included. My apologies for any omissions. Drummer John Hartman met Skip Spence, who had formed Moby Grape after leaving the Jefferson Airplane. Spence introduced him to guitarist, singer, and songwriter Tom Johnston. They began what was to become the Doobie Brothers. They tried various combinations of players under various band names in and around the San Jose area in 1970. In that year, they met guitarist, singer, and songwriter Pat Simmons, who had been playing solo as well as in various bands. He was not so much a rhythm guitarist as he was a second lead, along with bassist Dave Sjogren. This became the nucleus of the band. While playing around San Jose, the band was having difficulty coming up with a name they all liked. A friend of theirs suggested the Doobie Brothers because they were constantly smoking pot. Hey, sometimes names are as simple as what's right in front of you, right? The band didn't really like it, but nothing better came along, and it stuck. They sharpened their skills playing all over Northern California. They developed a following of Hell's Angels who attended their shows at the Chateau Liberate in the Santa Cruz Mountains. Due to all this activity, they got the attention of Ted Templeman, a staff member at Warner Brothers, who became their producer. The group signed a contract before the end of the year. They released their first album, which was self-titled, in April of 1971. It's a blend of acoustic and electric guitars with country influences. The music label sent the band on tour that year. While on tour, they played around with the idea of adding a second drummer. Michael Hosick joined the band in the summer as that second drummer. They went to Hollywood in October to start recording a second album. Dave Sjogren had several disputes with Templeman and left the band during the sessions. Tyrone Porter, who had played with Pat Simmons earlier, was brought in, thus starting a long string of personnel changes. The result of these sessions was their second album, Tully Street. I don't know, I'm probably saying it wrong, guys. This album became the breakthrough success they've been looking for. Both Listen to the Music and Jesus Is Just Alright were hits. 1973 brought the next album, The Captain and Me, which contained two more hits, China Grove and Long Train Running. During the recording of their fourth album, what were once vices are now habits. Michael Hosick left the band, citing burnout from constant touring and recording, which in the 60s and 70s was just brutal. Singer and drummer Keith Knudsen was recruited to join the band for that album and tour. That included their first #1 Billboard hit, Blackwater. Around this time, Steely Dan decided they were going to stop touring and use studio musicians. Their lead guitarist, Jeff "Skunk" Baxter, joined the Doobie Brothers as a third lead guitarist. By the end of 1974, Tom Johnston had severe health problems. Their next album, Stampede, had been recorded featuring him on a remake of a Kim Weston Motown classic, Take Me in Your Arms. Eventually, he was hospitalized with a bleeding ulcer. He stopped touring and recording. As a result, the band reached out to another Steely Dan alum, the one and only Michael McDonald. The Michael McDonald years of the band will be covered in part 2. There were many personnel changes during this period of note, which I will detail there, but I mention them here for context. In 1979, Jeff Baxter and John Hartman left the band. Then Chet McCracken was added to replace John Hartman. John McPhee was brought in to replace Baxter, and Cornelius Bumpus brought keyboard, saxophone, and vocals. In 1980, Bobby LaKine joined as a percussionist and vocalist, and Tyrone Porter left. As time went on, there's a general feeling that the Doobie Brothers were a little more than a backup band for McDonald. In 1981, Pat Simmons, the last original member, and Michael McDonald left the band to take up solo careers. There was little left to preserve, so the rest of the band decided enough was enough and disbanded. From time to time over the next few years, members of the group would get together for small tours. Every year they'd play a Christmas concert at Stanford's Children's Hospital. In 1987, several members of the band got together for a short tour in support of the Vietnam Veterans Aid Foundation, a charity Keith Knudsen was involved in. The tour was successful, and there was talk of a reunion. In 1989, the album Cycles was released with Tom Johnston, Pat Simmons, John Hartman, Tyrone Porter, and Michael Hosick. The album was successful with the hit track, The Doctor. They then released a follow-up in 1991, Brotherhood, that without Capitol Records support did not do well. They released another CD in 2010, World Gone Crazy. Between then and current day, different combinations of the band have popped up, but for the most part, it's been Tom Johnston, Pat Simmons, and John McPhee leading the charge. They're releasing a new CD, Liberate, on October 1st of this year. It's 2021 when I'm recording this. They're currently on tour with Michael McDonald through next year. The city of San Jose acknowledged the significance of the band by making the house they lived in around 1969 to 1971 a historical landmark. By the way, in the interest of full disclosure, D says, I went to high school with Pat Simmons. I'm sure he doesn't remember me. I was a freshman when he was a senior, although we did date my best friend's sister. My context of this is only that they had 14 studio albums, including 6 top 10 appearances on the Billboard 200 album chart, including 1978's Minute by Minute, which reached number 1 for 5 weeks, and won the band a Grammy for Best Pop Vocal Performance by a Duo or Group, while the single What a Fool Believes from the album won 3 Grammys itself. As Dee mentioned, we're not covering the Michael McDonald years, but I'm just giving you the full context of the band as he did. The band's released 6 live albums and numerous greatest hits, including 1976 Best of the Doobies, which is certified diamond, which is rarefied air by the RIAA for 10 million copies sold, the band's best-selling album. There's 16 Hot 100 Top 40 hits, include many that we're going to see here, and I bet many that we're going to see next. Top 10 in part 2. The Doobies were inducted into the Vocal Group Hall of Fame in 2004 and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame just last year at the time it's recorded in 2020, and they sold more than 40 million albums worldwide. We're about to dive into this. Before we start, guys, the music will not be in here. Check out the Vimeo link below if you want to follow along and listen to the music with me. I'm going to have the lyrics up as always. Let's get to it. Number 10 is Nobody, from their debut album. This is the first track on their debut album. It's interesting. It's the first thing you ever would have heard if you were following along in live time. D says this is from their self-titled debut album. It did not chart, but I always liked it and thought it was a good indicator of where the band was headed. They re-released it on their 2010 World Gone Crazy and streamed it for free. Nobody. Fantastic guitar work. Kind of what I expected. I didn't mention the start. I know a few Doobie Brothers songs. I'm probably going to come across some in this list and probably especially in the next list that I didn't know were Doobie Brothers songs. I mean, I was born in 1971, so all this stuff predates me. I don't listen to classic rock radio stations, so I don't really know almost anything on this list, at least by name that I look at, maybe 1 or 2 on here. But yeah, man, I really enjoyed this. It sounded like kind of what I thought it would. Basically, the premise of the song is nobody's going to take his joy away, kind of references in the first verse like he didn't have a good home life, this or that, but he's not going to let his circumstances determine how he's going to feel about things. The whole nobody in that harmony in the chorus is so nice, and I like it. Then he goes, nobody's going to take my love away from me. Just very well performed, fantastic musicianship. That's going to take us to our number 9. We got Dangerous from the Brotherhood album in 1991. D says this is from one of their albums released after the original band regrouped. I really like the sliding guitars and the whole outlaw vibe. And I found the song deals with riding down a road where dangers surrounding the protagonist of the song at every turn. But the song tells that it's because of these dangers that the man continues to ride and loves every minute of it. Dangerous subject matter, just what I talked about at the beginning. He's talking about riding his motorcycle and the dangers involved, but how that really invigorates him. I think it's a showcase for their instrumentation and musicianship. You know, even at this stage in 1991, a little flex to show what they could do. Just a nice little jam tune. So I could see why you put this on here, Dan. I think it gives good context that it's all these years later. Now we're up to number 8. You see it below. Jesus Is Just All Right With Me from, I looked up how to say this, Toulouse Street, 1972, their second studio album. D says the slow part of this reminds me of sitting around in a dorm room thick with pot smoke, which is a little strange given the content. It shows off the strength of Pat Simmons' voice. I saw it's a gospel song written by Arthur Reed Reynolds and first recorded by Reynolds' own group, the Art Reynolds Singers, on their 1966 album, Telling It Like It Is. The first cover version of the song was recorded by the Byrds in 1969. For this version for the Doobies, it was their second single, went to 35 in the U.S. The band first became aware of this song after hearing the Byrds version, and before long the song had been added to their live repertoire. As a result, the musical arrangement is very similar to the one used by the Byrds, not the original one, although the Doobies rendition does include an extra bridge that the band added themselves. I thought that was a nice touch. Jesus Is Just All Right With Me. The lyrics are very simple, right? A bunch of harmonies in here, but it's kind of a musicianship flex again, kind of like the last song was, Dangerous, in a different way. Just everything is involved in here. This is a live venue jam. I can only imagine it was back in the day. So really enjoyed that sound. Has the sound of the time in the 70s. Very good choice for number 8. Now we're up to number 7. As you see below, Clear as the Driven Snow from The Captain and Me, 1973, their third studio album. D says this Pat Simmons tune shows his growing songwriting skills. I'm not sure how you classify this song, so it's probably best left undone. It sounds like several different songs tied together. However he came up with it, it works perfectly. I saw, according to Johnston, it's a warning about recreational chemical abuse, which reflected the band members' lifestyles at that time. Clear as the driven snow. Once again, I'm a broken record with the musicianship on here. The drumming I mentioned earlier, it's fantastic. Then we get a minute plus acoustic run on here, and then we build up into everything else. The last half of the song is just a jam. You can definitely tell it's about substance abuse. You know, in the second verse, they hand him the bottle, said, "Drink till it's gone. Thought I'd learn how not to get burned." And then he gets into this wind and the trees blow. Even the sea knows that I've learned how, that I can see now, looking through dreams. And then a little play on words. I keep rolling, I keep rolling, I keep rolling, and I can't stop. Rolling and I can't stop is driving me out of my mind. And he says, to the truck stop, to the plane hop, to the boat dock, and I'm so close. Boat dock, and I'm so close. Give me a little more time. Just a really kind of clever way of writing up what they were going through with, obviously, as so many bands did in the 70s, the substance abuse issues. Now we're up to number 6. We have Take Me in Your Arms from the Stampede album in 1975. Dee says this is another cover, this time of an old Kim Weston Motown song that shows how soulful Tom Johnston's voice can be. I researched it out, written by the premier Motown songwriting production team of the 60s, Holland Dozier, Holland, or HDH as we know them. Johnston later recalled, I had been a fan of that song since it came out somewhere in the 60s. I just love that song. So somewhere around 72, I started lobbying to get the band to do a cover of that, and I didn't get anywhere until 75. Then finally in 75, we actually did it. Doobie's member Jeff Baxter said of the recording, quote, that song's like a dream come true for us. Every musician I've ever known has at some point wanted to achieve Motown's technically slick sound. It's so dynamic. We sat down to try to duplicate it and to see if our version could emerge as a successful single. According to Doobie Brothers frontman Patrick Simmons, at first the band sounded like the Grateful Dead doing the Four Tops, but gradually it came together quite accurately. Motown veteran Paul Reiser was enlisted to arrange the track. That had to help. Lead single off this album went to 11 in the US, 29 in the UK. Take Me in Your Arms and, for instance, Rock Me a Little While. Wow, that was a fantastic tune. It sounded totally different. They definitely sounded Motown on his. They played it straight down the middle. And like a lot of these songs that HDH wrote, I mean, it's either about love or love leaving. This one happens to be about love leaving. He's asking her. He knows she's leaving. He's not going to be able to be around her anymore. He's heartbroken. But just one more time, just rock me a little while. Just a great, great rendition. Man, that so far is my favorite. We are already to the top half of this list. We have Long Train Running off The Captain and Me in 1973. Dee says, again, Tom Johnston's voice is just perfect for this original tune. He also wrote it. I found that the tune evolved from an untitled and mostly ad-lib jam that the Doobies developed on stage years before it was finally recorded. Its working title, according to Johnston, was Rosie Pig Mosley and later Osborne. I didn't want to cut it, Johnston later confessed. I just considered it a bar song without a lot of merit. But Teddy Templeman, the producer, on the other hand, thought it had something to it. Templeman convinced Johnston to write words to the song. Let's check it out. Long Train Run. Like I said when it started, I knew this song. You know that guitar riff, it's so instantly recognizable, but I mean, I haven't heard it a ton of times. People sometimes ask, have you never heard it? I don't listen to classic radio. Where in the world am I going to hear Long Train Running from the Doobie Brothers? Like, honestly, I was 4 years old when the song came out. So, a good track. You could tell. I mean, it's a jam session, right? As some of these other ones are. It's not a lyrical masterpiece, but I mean, it doesn't have to be. You know, just using the train as the motif of people down on their luck and him chasing things and love and those things. Very catchy. Great harmonies on it, even though the instrumentation is the standout on it. Now we come up to I Cheat the Hangman. What a name. From Stampede 1975. Dee says Pat's songwriting skills are again on display in this complex and beautiful song. His songs have been getting better and better, and I think this, along with Blackwater, are his creative peak. It's the third single released from this album. It's a somber outlaw ballad that's inspired by the story of an occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge by Ambrose Bierce. It's about a ghost returning to his home after the Civil War and not realizing he's dead, said Simmons about the song. The album version of the song is a progressive rock-style composition, ending in a twisted collage of strings, horns, and synths made to sound like ghostly wails, which is what we're going to listen to. We cut the track and we kicked around how to develop the ending. I thought about synthesizers and guitar solos. Ted Templeman got to thinking about it and he ran it past arranger Nick DeCaro for some orchestration ideas, is what Simmons says on this. The longest song on here, 6.5 minutes. Let's check it out. I Cheat the Hangman. Interesting song, right? I said it during the song, very prog rockish, right? Doesn't sound anything like anything we've heard before on this list. It's interesting. It's on the same album, Stampede, as the 6-track "Take Me in Your Arms," which is a Motown cover. So this might be the album I'm gonna have to go dig into, but just with the drastically different sounds. Basically, the song is about, she's left him, so I cheat the hangman, cheat him many times before. The bell that tolls the hours turns sweet lips to sour. Yes, I cheat the hangman, and even when life is flown away, I leave a kiss behind. But talks about the start. He doesn't have her anymore. But it's more about the sonic experience, right? The words just kind of add a little bit to it. But it's a sonic experience that goes a lot of different places. That outro is over 3 minutes long. You get a lot of new stuff coming in there, more heavy synth. But really enjoyed that one. All right, we're up to number 3, China Grove off the 1973 album, The Captain and Me. Dee said this is one of their first straightforward rockers. In my mind, one of Tom Johnson's best, who also wrote it. I found it as a single, went to 15 in the U.S. It's based on a real small town in Texas. Johnston thought he had created a fictional town called China Grove near San Antonio, and later learned it really exists from his cab driver in Houston. Johnston later explained that the band had been on tour, passing through the town of China Grove on their way to or from San Antonio, and he had seen a road sign with the name, but somehow had forgotten about it. I guess we travel everywhere and you're trying to come up with these songwriting ideas, different things that's coming to your subconscious, man. Let's check it out. China Grove, never heard that song. As usual, great guitar work, great musicianship. Just as Dee said, just a straight up rocker. He describes his town a little bit and what the town people thought of this description of it. But I mentioned in the reaction, it has Bo Diddley beat in there. And there's just not a lot to this. I think it's more just for the jam, right? The lyrics aren't anything to really break down. Now we'll go to a song that I for sure know. Listen to the music off the Toulouse Street 1972 album. Dee said this was their first big radio hit, written by Tom Johnston as a celebration of music. I found Tom described the motivation for the song as a call for world peace. He said, the chord structure of it made me think of something positive, so the lyrics that came out of that were based on this utopian idea that the leaders of the world would get together on some grassy hill somewhere and either smoked enough dope or just sat down and just listened to the music and forgot about all this other BS. The world would be a much better place. It was very utopian and unrealistic. It seemed like a good idea at the time. It still seems like a good idea almost 50 years later. Single went to 11 in the U.S. Patrick Simmons, the second guitarist and vocalist in the group, sings the bridge of the song. Listen to the music. Definitely knew this one. What an infectious guitar riff just driving this song. And it's, what he talked about. What the people need is a way to make them smile. It ain't so hard to do if you know how. Got to get a message through. Got to get it on through. Oh, now, mama, don't you ask me why. Oh, I'm not gonna torture you with it. Listen to the music. Verse 2, well, I know you know better everything I say. Meet me in the country for a day. We'll be happy. We'll dance. Oh, we'll dance our blues away. Just a great upbeat song. Just a fantastic song. A classic. That brings us to our number 1. You see it below. Blackwater from the What Were Once Vices Are Now Habits album in 1974. Dee says this was their first Billboard #1 song, and deservedly so. Pat Simmons really puts everything together here in a song that all can sing and enjoy. Simmons would recall that he chanced on the basic guitar lick for Blackwater while at Warner Brothers for the recording sessions for the Doobie Brothers 1973 album, The Captain and Me. I was sitting out in the studio waiting between takes, and I played that part. All of a sudden, I heard the talkback go on, and Ted Templeman, the producer, says, "What is that?" I said, "It's a little riff I came up with that I've been tweaking with." He goes, "I love that. You should really write a song using that riff." So Simmons cites the song's opening section as, quote, "My childhood imaginings of the South from reading Huck Finn and Tom Sawyer, while the lyrics subsequent to the first chorus draw on his actual experience of New Orleans, going down to the French Quarter as often as possible and going into the clubs and listening to Dixieland." I don't recognize the name of this song. I'm going to guess I know this song, since it was their first #1, but I was 3 when it came out. Let's check out Dee's #1, Blackwater. Blackwater, so I definitely knew this song, and it's because it repeats that. I'd like to hear some funky Dixieland. Pretty mama, come and take me by the hand. Take me by the hand, pretty mama, come and dance with your daddy. Oh no, it repeats that 5.5 times to end out the song, so it really sticks in your head. So just a well written song. The vocals on it and the harmonies on it are fantastic. Definitely a fitting #1. Now we're going to get to the list of my favorites. I got Nobody in the previous track, Blackwater, as honorable mentions. My favorites are Take Me in Your Arms, I Cheat the Hangman, and listen to the music. But a great list brought to us by D. He promises a part 2 of the Michael McDonald years, so be looking out for that. And if you'd like to support us in any way like D does, check out the link below for our Patreon page or on the end screen that's about to hit. The patrons make this thing go. We couldn't do it without them. Thanks, guys, for watching. Until next time, I will see you.